Let's take you back to South Africa's Home Affairs Minister, Dr. Motsoaledi. We were speaking to him from our studios in the Northern Cape in Galeshewe to talk about the Immigration Act. But, Minister, I do apologize. I know that I did cut you off rather abruptly, but there was that breaking news from the U.S. Perhaps let me get you to respond to that. You were listening to that speech. What is your impression as a politician on how the U.S. President phrased his reaction to Iran's attack?
Tepiso, thank you very much. Apology taken, but unfortunately, Trump said nothing at all. In fact, he didn't speak like a head of state. He spoke like a militiaman. That's all I can say. I had nothing to explain what's happening, but I had a macho talk of a militiaman who is praising having lots of weapons and all that, instead of calling for peace around the world, which everybody is striving for. That's quite unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate.
But do you get a sense that, because the diplomatic community globally has been calling for restraint, is there evidence in his response that he is heeding that there will be no retaliation to Iraq's missile attack?
No, it's not encouraging at all. In fact, he's bullying all the nations, calling nations which are sitting with him in Security Council at the same level, calling them to reconsider. We are in trouble. Let me just put it that way. The whole world is in trouble because we have got a man who is a head of a very powerful nation who has got no qualities of leadership at all. It's very, very unfortunate.
All right, Minister, let's come back to the issue at hand, and that is the Refugees Act, some of the amendments there. Now, you are lamenting the fact that people were just singling out certain aspects, the issue of political activity. And I was asking before we go about the stipulation that says that a refugee can lose their status for any assistance or official documents such as travel documents, citizenship-related document that they request from their country. Is this correct, the interpretation thereof?
No, it's one of the 7 topics under which condition is there a cessation of refugee status. Now, Tsepiso, this is not new. If you move to the Principal Act of 1998, meaning 22 years ago, there were 5 reasons how you can stop somebody being a refugee. One of them is re-availment, availing yourself to the country which you ran away from. You actually lose that status. If you, for instance, make yourself available to that country, if you get documentation from that country, if you get protection from that country, if you, for instance, the reasons under which you came, for instance, there was war, and United Nations declared that that war is over, you can actually, there can be cessation. So we just added important things like in the past episode, a person could defraud South African documents, could defraud our IDs, and nothing happens to them. They continue with their refugee status. In fact, one of the people who has been ravishing us on these laws, the chairperson of the Diaspora Forum, who unfortunately the media believe is an expert on immigration, Vusimu Sisibande, is a fraudster. He defrauded our documents, but because we did not have this in our regulations, he was pardoned.
You say he please give us more details on that. How did he defraud the system, Minister, for those who don't know?
He defrauded our documents. He obtained a South African ID fraudulently.
And he's a national of which country?
And when you... Sorry?
He's a national of which country?
No, he's a Zimbabwean. Vusimu Sisibanda is a chairperson of Diaspora Forum who is in South Africa. He's a Zimbabwean. Now, I am saying he defrauded our documents.
Okay.
But
now,
because in the regulations, there was nothing about sending you back if you defraud.
No,
Whereas if you defraud documents, you destroy the sovereignty of that country.
Is that why, Minister, you are saying that an asylum seeker or a refugee who enters the port of South Africa must declare their intention, including providing relevant data, his or her biometrics?
Well, that one is a different one from the defrauding documents.
Yes,
we want documentation.
Yes. Is that why you...
No, that one is not in the new regulations. It has always been there. The lawyers for human rights threatened to take us to court about that particular one, but instead they went to the Human Rights Commission, and the Human Rights Commission wrote to us twice, and twice we responded about what we are doing, and we had nothing about that. So it's not new, it's not part of these new regulations.
All right, so which other of the 7 do you think are most important, especially dealing with some of the challenges the government faces, which is also the criticism against you of not dealing with our porous borders?
Yes, Tsepiso. Now, when we come with regulations to regulate migration, people complain. When we do nothing, they say the department is very weak on migration, nothing is happening. It's part of strengthening that, because the initial Refugee Act of 1998 had a lot of gaps, have got lots of omissions, have got lots of weaknesses, and we want to do away with that. Having said so, one of the one of the important programs of the government is to make sure that the borders are no longer porous. I'm sure you have seen on social media how they were showing people just, coming in large numbers through broken fences and all that. And the public in South Africa was very angry at us, and they believe they are not safe. They feel like they are not living in a sovereign state. So for that reason, we are going to put up a border management authority. And Parliament has already passed that act. It was stuck in the NCOP. Fortunately, before Parliament closed down last year, before Parliament rose, the NCOP has finalized that. When we reopen, it will go back to the National Assembly to adopt the amendments, and we'll establish a border management authority so that we no longer have porous borders.
Just a final question. How do the amendments, Minister, deal with especially some of the transgressions on the labor and business front?
No, that's a very good question, Tsepiso, and I need to explain it, because I've had even lawyers in the field of immigration deliberately distorting it. What happened, Tsepiso, is that that in South Africa, unlike all the countries on the continent, when people are here as refugees or asylum seekers or migrants, they are not put in camps. They are integrated in communities. Many countries are not doing that, but South Africa is doing it. They are not in camps where they are taken care of by United Nations, international donor organizations, etc. They are integrated. So one of them, a lady from Zimbabwe called Wachenuga, went to court and said the process of applying is taking too long. I want to be allowed to work in the meantime. And the judges, cognizant of the fact that people are not in camps being taken care of by United Nations, agreed with her that yes, people who are applying for asylum in the country, they need to be allowed to work in the meantime. But where it's getting distorted, the judges said the Standing Committee on Refugees Affairs must determine the conditions under which that work can be done, what type of work. In other words, the work and study. And they said that must be determined. Since that time, it was never determined. So what we are saying, the new regulations, was that the Standing Committee on Refugee Affairs must sit and determine that in line with the instructions of the court.
Okay, Minister.
This is an instruction from a court of law.
All right, thank you very much for your time and clarification. The Home Affairs Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi.